You're broke because you keep fixing the symptoms instead of the disease. Most people obsess over cutting their coffee budget or switching to generic cereal while completely ignoring the invisible patterns draining their wealth. Understanding these habits is what separates those who stay stuck from those who actually build something. Let me show you what I mean. Consider how most people handle debt. They see a credit card balance of $3,000 and think the problem is the number. So they make minimum payments, celebrate when it drops a bit, then swipe the card again next month. The actual problem isn't the debt itself, it's that they never understood what debt actually represents. When you borrow money, you're renting cash from someone else. And like any rental, there's a fee attached. That fee is interest, and it compounds daily whether you think about it or not. Here's where it gets interesting. If you owe 20% interest on that credit card, you're not just paying back what you borrowed. You're paying for the privilege of having spent money you didn't have. Miss one payment, and suddenly your interest starts earning interest. That burrito you bought for $12 last month, with compounding interest and missed payments, it's costing you $50 now. The debt isn't the wound, it's the infection spreading because you never addressed the actual injury. But debt works both ways, and this is what most people miss entirely. The wealthy use debt constantly. They just point it in the opposite direction. Instead of borrowing to buy things that lose value, they borrow to acquire assets that grow faster than the interest rate. A business loan at 6% interest that funds an operation returning 15% annually isn't a burden, it's leverage. You're using someone else's money to multiply your own. The key difference is asking one simple question before borrowing anything. Will this purchase make me more money than it costs? Now let's talk about something nobody wants to hear. That savings account you're so proud of is quietly betraying you. You think you're being responsible, watching that balance grow month after month. Meanwhile, inflation is stealing your future in broad daylight. Picture this scenario. You save $5,000 over 2 years. Feels good, right? Except inflation averaged 3% annually during that time. Your money didn't grow in purchasing power. It shrank. What bought you a full grocery cart 2 years ago now barely fills half. You worked hard to save that money, and the economy made it worth less without you noticing. Inflation happens for a few reasons. Sometimes too much money chases too few goods. Imagine 2,000 people want a television that costs $500, but only 1,000 units exist. Businesses see the demand and raise the price to $800. Other times, supply chains break down, making production more expensive, which forces prices higher. Sometimes inflation feeds on itself. People expect prices to rise, so they spend faster, which actually drives prices up. It becomes a cycle. The government fights inflation by raising interest rates. When borrowing becomes more expensive, people spend less. Demand drops. Prices stabilize. But here's the trap most people fall into. They respond to inflation by hoarding cash, thinking they're protecting themselves. Actually, they're doing the opposite. Cash sitting idle loses value every single day. The only real defense against inflation is putting your money somewhere it grows faster than prices rise. Which brings us to the uncomfortable truth about safety. You've been taught that keeping money in a savings account is the responsible choice. And compared to spending everything immediately, sure. But compared to investing, you're choosing the illusion of security over actual wealth building. Banks pay you maybe 1% interest on savings. Inflation runs at 3%. You're guaranteed to lose 2% of your purchasing power annually. That's not safety. That's slow financial suicide. Most people avoid investing because they think it's risky. They hear stories about market crashes and assume investing means gambling. But the real risk isn't putting money in the market. It's leaving it on the sidelines where inflation devours it silently. Markets fluctuate, absolutely. Sometimes they drop hard, but over decades, they've consistently grown. Someone who invested consistently for 30 years didn't need luck. They needed patience and the discipline to ignore short-term panic. The pattern here is becoming clear. Every financial habit keeping you stuck has the same root cause. You're optimizing for feeling safe right now instead of being secured later. Minimum payments feel manageable today but cost you thousands in interest tomorrow. Savings accounts feel responsible but guarantee you'll lose purchasing power. Avoiding investments feels careful but ensures inflation steals your future. What I'm about to explain next changes everything about how you should think about money moving forward. Because once you understand the real mechanism behind wealth, you'll never look at a purchase the same way again. The real mechanism is something called compound growth, and it operates on a timeline most people never give it. You don't see results in weeks or months. You barely notice anything in the first year. But around year 7 or 8, something shifts. The growth stops being linear and starts becoming exponential. Your money doesn't just add up anymore. It multiplies against itself. Here's what that looks like in practice. You invest $100 monthly. After 1 year, you've got $1,200 plus maybe $50 in gains. Nothing exciting. After 5 years, you're sitting at around $7,000. Still feels slow. But after 20 years, you're looking at $46,000 and you only personally contributed $24,000. The other $22,000 appeared because your earlier money had children and those children had children. That's compound interest doing what it does best, turning patience into profit. Now, here's where most people mess this up completely. They see the market drop 15% and panic. They pull everything out, convinced they're protecting themselves. What they actually did was lock in their losses and reset their entire timeline back to zero. The people who get wealthy from investing do the opposite. When the market crashes, they keep investing. And sometimes they invest more. Why? Because they understand something crucial about how markets work. Crashes are temporary. Growth is permanent. Every major market drop in history recovered and then exceeded its previous high. The 2008 financial crisis looked like the end of the world. Anyone who kept investing through it doubled their money by 2013. The people who pulled out in fear, they missed the entire recovery and spent years trying to figure out when it was safe to get back in. Timing the market is a fantasy. Time in the market is the actual strategy. But let's address the elephant in the room. What if you don't have extra money to invest? What if you're barely covering rent and groceries? This is where the conversation gets uncomfortable because the answer isn't what you want to hear. You have to create that money, not by working more hours at your current job. That's just trading more time for the same rate. You create it by increasing what your time is worth. That means learning skills that pay better, taking on side work that compounds your income, cutting expenses that don't improve your life. I'm not talking about skipping coffee. I'm talking about the subscription services you forgot you had, the car payment on a vehicle you bought to impress people you don't like, the rent on an apartment that's bigger than you need because you thought space equaled success. Every dollar you free up is a soldier you can deploy into building actual wealth. Now let's talk about something that sounds contradictory. Debt isn't always your enemy. Bad debt is. There's a massive difference. Bad debt pays for things that lose value. A loan for a new car that depreciates the second you drive it off the lot. A credit card balance from buying clothes you didn't need. That's bad debt. It costs you money to own things worth less than what you paid. Good debt pays for things that gain value or generate income. A mortgage on property that appreciates. A business loan that funds expansion. Student loans for a degree that triples your earning potential. Good debt is leverage. It's using someone else's money to build something worth more than the interest you pay. The wealthy understand this instinctively. They borrow at 4% to invest in something returning 8%. The difference is profit. Poor people borrow at 18% to buy things that return 0%. The difference is poverty. Your credit score determines which type of debt you can access. A high score means you get good debt at low rates. A low score traps you in bad debt at predatory rates. Building your score isn't about being good with money. It's about being trustworthy to lenders. Pay everything on time. Keep your credit card balances low relative to your limits. Don't open 5 new accounts in 6 months. Let your accounts age. Treat your credit score like a plant. Water it consistently, give it time, and it grows. Ignore it, and it dies. Here's the final piece nobody wants to accept. Building wealth requires you to be uncomfortable now so you can be comfortable later. That's the trade. You can't have both simultaneously unless you were born into money. Everyone else has to choose. Comfort now means struggle later. Discipline now means freedom later. Most people choose comfort. They finance lifestyles they can't afford, avoid investments that feel risky, and convince themselves they'll start saving next year. Next year becomes next decade. Next decade becomes retirement age with nothing saved. The math is brutal but simple. Start investing early, stay consistent, ignore the panic, and time does the heavy lifting. Wait until you feel ready, and you'll run out of time before you run out of excuses. Money doesn't care about your feelings. It follows rules. Learn the rules, play the game correctly, and you win. Ignore them, and you spend your life wondering why everyone else seems to have figured out something you missed. Money is a system that rewards those who understand it and punishes those who don't. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't filled with secrets or hacks. It's filled with decisions you've been avoiding. Stop treating symptoms. Address the disease. Use debt as a tool, not a crutch. Let inflation push you toward investing instead of hoarding cash that loses value daily. Build your credit score like it matters, because it does. Most importantly, give your money time to work. The difference between struggling and thriving isn't income level. It's whether you learned these principles at 25 or 55. Every year you wait costs you exponentially. The system doesn't change. Your relationship with it has to.